which is about a witch. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be talking about my fantasy Reddit bingo board. Alright, before we get to anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments, are you partaking in this year-long reading challenge? Are you just not hearing about it? Are you intrigued? Do you have any ideas for some of these prompts for me? Please leave all information for that in the comments. Alrighty, so like I said, this is a year-long reading challenge which is hosted on the fantasy subreddit, where there is this beautiful bingo board. I'm actually gonna go ahead and scoot over. You can try and get a bingo, you could try and black out the board, which is what I am doing. Plus there's an easy version as well as a hard version for every single prompt. Every prompt has to have its own individual book. You cannot repeat authors, and you can only count one reread for one of these prompts. But there is the opportunity for you to change out one of these prompts for a prompt from a previous year's bingo board, which I did do, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. My goal is to try and complete this board. Do I really get anything out of this apart from a cool title next to my username? No, not really, but it's gonna be satisfying. On top of that, this is just a cool opportunity to sort of force myself to pick up books I wasn't previously expecting to. I did my best to try and focus on my own TBR, but obviously that can't always be the case. This does run from April 1st of 2024 until March 31st of 2025. Any books I have already finished in April 1st will count for this on certain prompts. I say that because I have already knocked one out. If you're interested in this, I will put information for it in the description down below. Definitely go check it out. It just encourages you to read different speculative fiction books. And with that being said, not all of these books fall under simply sci-fi or fantasy. There are a few horrors, there's some magical realism or romanticities in here. All right, so with all of that introduction out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into my TBR to black out this baby. Ironically though, for the first book on this bingo board, I don't have anything planned. It is to read the first book in a series. The hard mode version of this is to start a series that is longer than a trilogy, which would be cool if I could do. I can always fall back on using a Star Wars option, which is great because I'm reading that Star Wars universe right now. The phases can kind of be considered as different series in themselves, seeing as how each phase has like its own little plot going on between the books. And also a lot of them are from different authors. Works out very well for me. On to the next one though. A book with a alliterative title. So basically a title that has multiple words starting with the same letter. The hard mode version is to read a book with 3 or more. I am still searching for one, but currently I have Old Flames and New Fortunes by Sarah Hogel, a magical realism romance story in which our main character is fake dating her friend at a wedding of her benefactor to the flower shop she owns. However, she ends up running into her ex-boyfriend who she still has feelings for, but things get messy when she has to continue fake dating her friend. The magical realism element comes into the fact that I think she has the ability to help the hopeful manifest love in their lives through her flower arrangements. I didn't know how else to describe that other than looking at the back of the book. This is my easy option for right now. If I can find a hard one though, I'll change it out. Then for Under the Surface, this is to have a book that takes place under the sea or under the ground. Hard mode version is for 50% or more of the book to take place under the surface. I don't think this one quite worked for 50%. Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen, I did already finish this year, and the main character is a mermaid, so there is a fair amount of the time in the book where she is under the water. If I do decide to pick up the second book in the series, I'm pretty sure a lot of it will take place underwater, so it could probably count for the hard mode version. But at this moment, I'm not really sure if I'm gonna continue the series, honestly, so this one might just be easy. We'll see. The next prompt is to read a book in which the main characters are criminals, and the hard mode version is if it features Heist, which luckily A Tempest of Tea by 𝗖cie viņš does. Thank God, because this is on my 10 books for 2024 and I am currently in the middle of reading it. Our main characters, Arthi and Jen, run a tea/blood house and unfortunately end up getting blackmailed into trying to commit a heist, and I'm really enjoying this so far. Then we have a book that has dreams. Hard mode is if the dreams aren't anything unusual, they're just a regular everyday dream. I'm not 100% sure on if this one will work, but the previous books in this series did have the main character discussing the dreams she was having. The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. This is the 3rd book in the Winter Night trilogy. I have been enjoying it so far. It's probably not a new favorite series, but definitely fantastically done, based around Russian folklore and with Russian history woven into the story. As I mentioned, the main character, 𝗖cie, has talked about the dreams she's not suffered from, but experienced in the previous 2 books. Hopefully that will happen here as well. And then also that will allow me to finish out the series. Onto the next line, we have the first one, Entitled Animals, which is basically a book with a animal in the title. I already read The Wolf at the Door by 𝗖cie _HIH𝘁, which could obviously account for this because it is set in a world where werewolves are real. And we're following an ex-FBI agent who ends up getting paired with one to investigate some wolf serial killer crimes. The hard mode version of this is to read a book where the animal is actually like a mythological being. I don't have one planned, but if I stumble across one, that would work out very well. Then for the next one, a book that features a bard. Hard mode is if the character is actually literally called a bard, and I do know A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross would fall under that. All I really know is that it's set on an island where girls are going missing, and for some reason the bard and his magical music is what's going to be utilized to try and stop this or bring the girls back. That's all I really know about it, and that's all I want to know. I trust Rebecca Ross, so hopefully I will love this. Thankfully, it's also only a duology, so easy series to finish off. Then next up is Prologues and Epilogue, basically a book that has one of those 2 things. Hard mode is if it has both, and while technically they aren't listed as prologue and epilogue, it does appear that The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty does have both of those things. While I was not the biggest fan of Shannon Chakraborty's City of Brass, I'm very hopeful for this one because it's seafaring, it's pirates, it's set in the same universe as City of Brass, but like 100 or a few hundred years before. One way or another, it does still sound up my alley. I'm just hopeful that since this one was written later, maybe the qualms I had with City of Brass were fixed here. And I have heard a lot of positive things, so maybe I'll finally get this beautiful book read. Then to read a book that is self-published or indie published. Hard mode is if it is less than 100 ratings on Goodreads, or it was a publisher who did an Ask Me Anything on the sub. The final one on the second row is to read a romantasy book. The hard mode version of this is if the main character is queer, and luckily I have 2 books on my own TBR that will fall into this, and I'm not sure which one I will go with because I do have plans to read both of these this year. She says, hopefully. The first being A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Foz Meadows, which is a fantasy romance with a arranged marriage plot plus a mystery plot line going on, and I'm excited for this. Destiny recommended it to me, and everything I've read from her that she recommended I've loved, so very excited to read this beauty, even if it is a chunky girl. And I've seen the second book, it's just as long. I also am considering Marvelous Light by Freya Marske, which I think is more of a cozy fantasy, but it does have a magical world, and unfortunately one of our main characters is a human who doesn't know this exists when he takes up a government job through the magical government. I believe it also has a fantastical mystery. Basically fantastical mystery plus queer romance. That's what both these books are, and I'm very excited for both of them. Starting into the third row, we first have Dark Academia, which is a subgenre that I have had mixed results with. But when I saw that the hard mode version is that the school itself is completely mundane, Education and Malice by S.T. Gibson popped into my head because I believe really the only fantastical elements of the story is that vampires exist, because this is a Carmilla retelling. Unfortunately, I have heard a lot of mid things on this, especially in comparison to A Dowry of Blood, which everybody, including myself, loves, and this is technically considered a sequel set in the same universe, but I still want to read it. I just think I'll probably pick it up from the library. Then for a multi-POV book, hard mode is to have at least 5 points of view. Honestly, I couldn't not consider a Star Wars book because every one I've picked up so far, at least in the adult ones, has had more than 5 perspectives. I don't know which one it'll be, but one of the Star Wars books I read will definitely fulfill this. Then published in 2024 with a hard mode of an author's debut novel, worked out so well that I just recently grabbed So Let Them Burn by Camilla Cole from the library so that I could partake in the Full Moon Book Club hosted by Jan Agaton. It completes both of those things, and it has this gorgeous cover, sisters and dragons, and that's basically it, honestly. I'm hopeful I will like it. We'll find out together. Then the next one is a book that features a character with a disability. Hard mode is if that disability is either physical or mental. Luckily, I am planning to finish out the Between Earth and Sky trilogy by Rebecca Roanhorse with Mirrored Heavens that comes out in June. One of the main characters throughout the series, Serapio, is blind, so that will fulfill this prompt as well as help me finish out the series, which is fantastic and I highly recommend. Next one though is a little bit harder for me because I have tended to be checking out newer fantasy books, and this is published in the 1990s. If I were reading the Star Wars Legend books, absolutely one of those would count, but I'm focusing on the canon ones first. Hard mode is if the author has also recently come out with a book in the last 5 years. Thankfully, I checked out a post for recommendations on this prompt, and I did see Death of the Necromancer by Martha Wells was available, saw the title, and then the fact that it was Martha Wells, added it to my TBR. I've really enjoyed the Murderbot series, so I trust Martha Wells when it comes to writing. I don't need to know anything else, but I'm very hopeful I will like it. This is kind of a shot in the dark. We'll find out if it works out together. Then starting into the fourth row, we have Orcs, Trolls, and Goblins. Oh my. Hard mode is where one of the main characters is a orc, troll, or goblin. Unfortunately, I've already read Legends and Lattes, which is the very obvious pick for this one. But I did see that 9 Goblins by T. Kingfisher was a recommendation from people in the sub. Recently read Bryony and Roses and absolutely adored it, so I'm interested in more of T. Kingfisher's work. Then I saw recommended for a queer fantasy romance story, Claimed by the Orc Prince by Lionel Hart. I genuinely can't with the title, if I'm being honest. The cover is quite pretty though, and I have heard that apparently this orc is like super soft, super nervous, super uneasy, and that does sound really adorable. Then is a space opera book. Can you guys figure out what I'm gonna read for this? Hard mode is for a book written by an author of a marginalized gender, and I do know there are a few books in the Star Wars universe that I'm planning to read which are written by a non-binary author, so that'll work out perfectly. Then to read a book by an author of color, Hard mode is a debut book published in the last 5 years, and thankfully Daughter of the Moon Goddess will work for that by Sulin Tan. I actually have a video planned for this one, so I really should get it read this year. This is a fantasy retelling of the Chinese moon goddess tale, and I've been very interested in picking it up. I've heard the writing is absolutely exquisite, though the plot I've heard some issues about. One way or another, I am still excited, but I've managed my expectations a little bit. Then we have a book that focuses on survival of the characters. Hard mode is no super viruses or pandemics. I wasn't really sure what direction to go in with that, but I saw somebody recommend She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan because the point of the book is to survive the war. This was really marketed as like Song of Achilles meets Mulan. However, I have heard to pull your expectations away from that description. Even still, I am planning to read this also for a different video this year. Hopefully, I think Sam and I are gonna be buddy reading it. I also believe this will complete a book club prompt I have. So I'm knocking out a lot of birds with this single stone. Final one on the fourth row is to judge a book by its cover. First off, I love this prompt. The hard mode version though is to pick the book based only on the information available on the cover. No reading the blurb. And I know nothing about The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. I've heard a few reviews, but nothing really specific was stated in those reviews about the actual plot. I don't even think I actually read the card that came with this book when I got it in the Evernight box because I was just blown away by its beauty. And I still am. It's absolutely stunning. So hopefully we'll be reading this one later this year, perhaps in October, because it definitely is very spooky vibes just from the cover alone. Onto the final row with Set in a Small Town. I have 2 magical realism romances that will fall into that. Either The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields, which is about a witch who I believe gets her power from honey. Super cool, sapphic romance, enemies to lovers. All over it. Very excited to read this one. Then also The Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. Our main character is a witch, but does little like YouTube videos where she tricks people into thinking it's all editing for fun, and then gets enlisted to teach these witch children their magic. I've heard a lot of positive things about this one, so I'm also very excited to get to it. Plus my friend Kat annotated this copy for me, so that means it'll be a very fun reading experience. Okay, and now we are actually finally to the prompt that I replaced. I ended up switching out 5 sci-fi fantasy short stories for superheroes because personally I don't really love short stories. I'm not reading the ones for my Star Wars canon project, which would have been a good opportunity to do, but I know myself. I don't like them. Short stories and I don't really work. So rather, I'm gonna change this out for the superheroes prompt because I'm already planning to read The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune, and that just works out so well. What with the main character being a huge fan of superheroes to the point that he writes fan fiction about them. But I believe he eventually ends up meeting his favorite superhero and maybe getting powers himself. I don't know. I should be reading this later this month, so hopefully I'll figure that out. Then Eldritch Creatures, which ironically, I do have a book club prompt for this later this year. And the hard mode is that the book is not related to the Cthulhu myths at all. And I did see somebody recommend The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, which I own. I had this on my wish list because somebody sold it as adult horror Gravity Falls. And I am still very excited because of that description. I don't even know if with the editing you can see this, but I felt a little cramped. Then there is reference materials, and hard mode is to find a book that contains at least 2 of those. Luckily, I did see that The Wrath on the Dawn by Renee Attier has a map as well as a glossary. Ding! Got that baby. And this is another duology that I've been wanting to get around to quite some time, especially after Sam praised it so much last year. I need to read it. I really do. I've had it on my shelves for quite some time now. It's ridiculous. Finally is a book club or read-along book. And seeing as how I partake in a lot of book clubs, I'll probably pick up some other random fantasy this year that isn't on this gigantic list already. So I'm not setting one for this currently, but I'm betting it will probably be completed. All right, so this is the final goal. Will this change? Probably. Let's be real here. But at this time being, this is my TBR. This is my goal of fantasy books to try and get read for the rest of the year. This is also a lot of books off of my own TBR, so if I manage to do that, that would be fantastic. Honestly. I really should prioritize this a lot. All right, y'all, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me the little video game guy in the comments down below. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!